and it's located en route to Medina from Mecca, and it's quite close to the blessed city of Medina. It's approximately 70 miles from the blessed city of Medina. And the battle of Badr took place on 17th of Ramadan, the second year after Hijrah. And the battle itself, simply put, was good against evil. Very, very simple. Good guys against the bad guys. Truth against falsehood. But to understand why the battle took place, we've got to look at the background to Islam as well. So the first thing we should look at is when the message of Islam was being spread, there was severe opposition against it. Extremely. To such a state that the Muslims, they were oppressed, tortured. They had their property and wealth taken away. They were physically and mentally tortured. They were persecuted. They were wronged in many, many ways. And imagine, they were chased out of their homeland. And it's a bit different to nowadays. Nowadays, people settle, move around very easily. But in those days, remember, traveling was very difficult. It wasn't known that people would travel around, move around. So imagine having to leave that blessed city of Mecca. What would the emotions have been of the Muslims when they had to leave that blessed city, their belongings behind, all they had worked for, they had to leave it behind. And at the same time, we need to understand the personality of Arabs as well at the time. They're very, very proud people. And it would have been very difficult for them, for early Muslims, to be oppressed and not do anything about it. And think about the personalities within the Muslim camp. There were personalities like Sayyidina Umar, Sayyidina Hamza, Sayyidina Ali. These personalities, they're warriors, they're natural fighters. It's said about Sayyidina Umar and Sayyidina Hamza, they were experts in martial arts. Now imagine their natural reaction would have been when someone's oppressing them, someone's torturing them, they want to fight back naturally. But in the early Muslim history, restraint was called for. That's what they did. They all restrained themselves when they were in the city of Mecca. But it got to such an extent that the Muslims had to migrate to the blessed city of Medina. But even the migrations were very difficult. It wasn't as easy as just moving from one city to another. Financially, it was very difficult for them. Everything that they had worked for was taken away from them by the Quraysh. And at this point, revelation came when the Muslims were in the blessed city of Medina, that they could now defend themselves. Or they should defend themselves against the people who had oppressed them, taken their belongings from them. And they had every right to do that, to take back what was taken from them. And the Quraysh in Mecca, they were very, very upset with Muslims who had migrated to Medina. They weren't happy because they would always thought of these, how dare they leave us? So the Quraysh in Mecca, they had planned a very big campaign, a war against Muslims. And their mindset was they wanted to wipe out the Muslims. They wanted to make sure there's no Muslims left whatsoever. But for that, they needed a lot of money. And for that, what they had done was planned a very big caravan, a trade caravan to Syria. Now just imagine what would have been in this caravan. In the caravan, there would have been belongings of the Muslims that they had taken from them. So the Muslims had found out about this caravan as well that was on its way to Syria. And on the way back, Muslims had like, imagine someone's planning to wipe you out. Their aim is to finish you off. And how are they going about doing that? They're about to do some trade. And in that trade, there's your belongings. How would you just imagine, how would that feel? Someone's trading to wipe you out with your belongings. So the Muslims had planned to stop this caravan on the way back from Syria. And then the Quraysh found out about this plan, and the caravan diverted. But the Quraysh, they were very upset and really angry about this. And what they did, they set out for war. How they set out from the blessed city of Makkah with a 1,000-strong force. And when we're talking, they were known as the best force in Arabia. And as mentioned, when the Muslims had gone onwards to the Battle of Badr, the 313, they weren't equipped for a war. They weren't ready for a war. They weren't there for a war. But the Quraysh, they were very well equipped. So when this situation came about, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam gathered the Sahaba for a consultation to ask them what should be done. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted unity, wanted in the decision that everybody agrees. And that's what, alhamdulillah, he got to unite the Muslims, the Ansar and the Muhajir. He got to unite them, and they all gave their full support. And as mentioned, at the time, the Muslims weren't there for war. So what they just had there's 313 of them, and a few of them with swords. They weren't battle ready whatsoever. But in the opposite camp, a fully equipped army. They had weaponry, camels, war horses, they had defense armor as well. To put it into, if you have to think about it, now imagine 3 against 1, 3 people against 1. So 1,000 against 313. Just physically imagine yourself up against 3 people. But those 3 people have armors, they have weaponry. Or if you want to look at it in modern day terms, imagine a fully fledged army against a few with AK-47s. That was the reality of it. That's how poorly the Muslims were equipped, and that's how well the Quraysh, the enemy, were, how well they were equipped. And the Quraysh, when they had set off from Makkah, they were in a very joyous mood. To them, it was guaranteed. They were guaranteed victory. That's the mindset, because they were an army. They were just going as a victory celebration. In their minds, there was no other result that they were going to win. And for the Muslims, it seemed miraculous just to be alive. Just to be alive. In that situation, just to be alive. But what did the Muslims have? They had complete faith in Allah and His Messenger. They had complete faith. Before the battle, there was a special prayer made by Prophet Muhammad in which, in conversation with Allah Almighty, saying, if this set of people perish, die, who will there be left to worship you, be devoted to you? That was the reality. If the battle of Badr had been lost, there would be nobody left. There would have been no Islam left. That's how important this battle was. And within the battle, there was unseen help from Allah Almighty. And the battle is known as the Battle of Miracles, because there were so many open miracles in this battle. To name a few, initially, the Quraysh, when they were looking at the Muslims, to them it only seemed that the Muslims are just a handful. Not many at all. So that meant that they didn't retreat. So they stayed. So they were wanting the battle. And to the Muslims, Allah Almighty made it seem that the enemy isn't much. Even though there were 1,000 in the eyes of the Muslims, Allah blessed such a miracle on them that it seemed that they're not many. So that reassured the Muslims further and further encouraged the Muslims. But whilst the battle was taking place, to the enemy, at that point, the Muslims all of a sudden seemed twice the number. And what did that do? That intimidated the Quraysh, the enemy. And they were overawed by the Muslims. Now imagine psychologically, there's many things that happen to the Quraysh psychologically that dampen their spirits further. And the prayer that the Prophet ﷺ made, it was answered. How was it answered? First of all, the first step was 1,000 angels came to the support of the Muslims, which then was raised to 3,000. And thirdly, in case there is a sudden attack by the enemy, by the Quraysh, it was raised up to 5,000 angels. This is the unseen help from Allah Almighty to help the Muslims. And Muslims were also helped they were refreshed by Allah Almighty. Just before the battle had begun, Allah Almighty had refreshed the Muslims. And at the same time, the battlefield became firm for Muslims. And whereas for the enemy it became sticky and muddy, there was rain that occurred that helped the Muslims because the Quraysh grip was very weak, whereas the Muslims had been made stronger. Now imagine you're battling, you need to be mobile, move around, but the battlefield is very, very sticky. Another miracle of the battle is the Prophet threw some dust in the air, and Allah Almighty made this dust get blown into the eyes of the enemy, which made them confused. And that helped the Muslims, they favored the Muslims. And whilst the battle was taken, in no time, the chiefs of the Quraysh, they were killed. And the Quraysh became unsteady. And there was no direction for the enemy, for the Quraysh. And that led to the outcome of the battle, which was a great victory for the Muslims and a defeat for the Quraysh, for the disbelievers. And the enemy had retreated. When they saw so many of those Quraysh had been killed, many prisoners had been taken, that meant that they'd retreated. In the battle there was 14 blessed souls that were martyred on the Muslim side. Well, as we mentioned, many of the Quraysh had been killed, and the battle itself, it changed the course of history. The good that we see in this world is because of this blessed battle. Imagine that 313 had been wiped out. There would be no good left in the world. There would be no Islam. And we need to ask, Allah's help came. Why? What was the reason that there was help from Allah Almighty then? If we battle, if we fight for personal reasons or for the ego, that means you're battling for yourself, and that makes you boast and makes you ungrateful. Whereas if you fight, if you battle for Allah Almighty, you tend to be humble, and the victory, victory is from Allah Almighty. Those were the friends of Allah that were there. Allah had declared war on the Quraysh. And that's where the unseen help from Allah Almighty came. What are the lessons learned? There's many, many lessons learned from this battle for us. Why was Allah Almighty on the side of the Muslims? What was the reasoning behind it? The reasoning behind it was the true sincerity and the trust in Allah that the Muslims had. They knew there weren't many, but they had complete faith. They truly believed. They were in a state of gratitude and shukr towards Allah Almighty. They knew that victory is only from Allah. They knew that. They didn't think that this is from us, we've achieved this victory, we've won. No, they knew that this victory was a blessing from Allah Almighty. Numbers don't mean anything. 3 against 1 physically. Imagine 3 people about to attack you. It should have been a one-way battle. But this shows if you have true faith, numbers don't mean anything. Allah gave the Muslims victory when they were very, very weak. You know, what does that show us? That we should never, ever underestimate the power of dua. The blessed dua of the Prophet that was made, it was answered. And if we ourselves make dua in such a way, with full belief, it will be answered. It's just us having that faith, complete belief in the prayers being answered. And the thing to remember is that Allah's power is endless. How proud were the Quraysh to them? They were actually in a party mood. They came just to celebrate, just guaranteed victory. But victory, as we know, is only from Allah Almighty. And there's many, many lessons, for us to learn in this blessed month as well. And may Allah Almighty accept from us this good that we do in this blessed month, inshallah.